Hello there, friends. Before we jump into it, if you like what we do here on cPDH.guide, the YouTube, and you want to support us in a free way, because, you know, that's what friends do, hit that like, hit that subscribe, even share the damn thing. All right, on to the show. These intros are always kind of weird, so I'm just going to roll into it like I just did. Welcome. If you don't know, I think I say that every time. If you don't know who this gentleman is, I'll tell you exactly who this gentleman is. Out of all the tournaments that I'm keeping track of on cPDH.guide, this gentleman here has 16 match wins in 3 tournaments to his name. So 16 match wins, 8 wins with Abdel, blue, 6 wins with Malcolm Kedis, and 2 wins with the Weavers. So 16 matches, 3 tourneys. This gentleman, I was going to try to put you on a pedestal there for a second. I think you would appreciate it if I didn't. GatorBaitTV, aka Chris. What's up, my man? How you doing?
I can't complain today, man. It's my birthday, so I'm relaxing. I'm sitting down, having a good time. So no complaints from this guy.
Party in South Florida. Sweet. So yeah, I figured I'd hit you guys out there with some numbers. The reason why I wanted to bring that up is because the next winningest player that we're keeping records on for tournaments is Ryan at 8 wins. Then it's a tie between Obstinate and Lobert with 6 wins each. So you have twice the number of match wins for tournaments than the nearest person, and then 10 more than those other 2 fellas. So what I was going to say is it's not luck. I mean, so knowing you as long as I have, yeah.
Sometimes it's luck, bro. Sometimes it's luck.
Yeah. So I wanted to look that up because number one, I was pretty sure that you didn't know exactly. You probably had an idea, but you probably didn't know the actual numbers. And then on top of that, it's one of those things. But as a fellow player, I love you for those numbers, and I absolutely hate you for those numbers. Because let's see, Clay down there, number 53, 3 match wins. Yeah. In tournaments, yeah. So yeah. What I'll do is, for those of you who want to know the intimate details of how Gator grew up and the orphanage he came from, and how he learned how to be a pilot for a plane and all that stuff as a young child, I'll link the video that we did like last year that has some personal details and all of that stuff. Obviously, we could talk about him being a protege to Mother Teresa and saving children and all of that stuff here, but we won't bore you with the details. We'll kind of proceed into the thing that he's more recently known for. I was going to say good at, but like, how do we even know that you're even good at this? You could just be average.
Yeah. I get it.
All right. So the question everybody wants to know. So obviously, if you're watching this, Gator just won Sanctuary PDH Open Series number 6. Didn't really do it easily, kind of worked his way into the top 4. I think you were actually the 4th position. So you didn't own your way to the top, as it were. You kind of, I don't want to say slid, but just kind of eased into that 4th position, made it to the top 4, and then secured a win.
Yeah, we were all 2-2. Actually, one person got bumped with a 2-2 record, which was yeah.
So first time I think that's happened too, which is interesting as we get into these numbers. Maybe Bobby, it's time to do a cut to top 8, then top 4.
Ooh, that's spicy.
So the question on everybody's mind, because as I mentioned before, you're known for Abdel. You're also known for Malcolm Kedis. you're known for a lot of other decks that you interact with, namely with myself and Aaron with Sir Conrad, your daughter with Dargo Kedis, myriad more decks that you work with people to brew and develop and all of that stuff. Why Weavers?
So this one's actually a relatively in-depth conversation. So you want me to just start from the beginning, or?
Yeah, hit it.
So it won't be a short story. So let's just start with that one there. So we were doing a lot of in-person tournaments locally here with in my area, and the store that was holding them closed down back in December of last year.
Goblin's Heist.
Which is pretty disappointing. We were doing tournaments every Thursday, and we were doing one big one a month. Like the Thursday ones were just, like 8 to 12 people. And then we would have one big one a month between 16 to 24 people. And it was great tournaments. We all had a great time. But sadly, there were some complications with the store and the owners, and that store closed. But within the past 2 months, there's a new store around here that just picked up Pauper tournaments. And they're looking for local players, things of that nature. But a lot of these players don't know anything about Pauper. So as soon as that happened, I was like, guys, I would love to come in, and they're going to start doing gameplay videos, and it works, right? But none of them. So I come in with my 11 decks. A few of us that are local, I think you guys will know the names through Discord. So some of the people you guys might recognize on Discord would be, we have Kunks, we have Chinaman, and we have Yami. Those are all local players to me. So those players are part of the local meta. We all own a relatively significant amount of decks for cPDH. So what we're all doing is that we're bringing them to the store and letting players borrow them. It's kind of funny, the deck that I know Hive Mind Cryptid would like this a lot. The deck that is the most popular with borrowing, and also Izlain would like this, are two specific decks I have, which is Wilson Far Traveler and Siverus Cloakwood. Those are the two most popular decks that I have that people love to borrow, like by far. Every time I tell them what decks I have, the first one is Siverus and or Wilson. They're just tied, sprinting. People love those decks, right? But a lot of them don't have the threat assessments yet. And essentially what I'm getting to is the reason I'm playing Weavers is for redundant purposes. So a lot of them, I was playing Gretchen originally just because it's Gretchen, and I wanted to show them essentially the best and one of the best decks of the format. But they couldn't read, a lot of these new players were unable to read why the deck was doing what it was doing. So I said, let me simplify it for you guys. I will show you Weavers. So I built Weavers, put it together, started playing Weavers with them. And I was like, look, guys, this is why you need to learn. This deck will definitively teach you threat assessment. And they're like, but why? And I'm a teach by example, so I showed them the hard way. I'm just like, look, turn 2, land and tapper, turn 3, land and tapper, turn 4, land and tapper. And they're like, okay, we'll kill one of the land and tappers. And I question, why would they do that? They're like, well, because it's a land and tapper. I'm like, but I have 2 more. But one does 2 lands. I'm like, but I'm not winning. I could have won with the first one. Why would you kill the other 2 if the first one could win the game anyways? They're like, that's kind of a good point. But why would we not try to slow you down in mana? I'm like, well, that's true. But I have 15 mana, and you want me to have 10? Are you truly slowing me down? Maybe you should consider just taking me off of the table instead, and then holding it for when I attempt to go for win condition. And they're like, well, maybe. So a lot of the new players were like, we know how to beat them. We'll play land destruction. So they started blowing up my lands, which was fair, right? It's an experiment for them. That failed miserably because they didn't realize that Freed with Layweaver required 0 land enchantments. So they didn't realize that at first. They were like, oh, it's just if you have 2 blue mana, you win anyway. So I'm like, yeah, I can make infinite. They're like, darn. So then they went again, and they kept trying and trying and trying. And a lot of them are starting to get it. which is my favorite part. So to make the incredibly long story much shorter, we've gotten to a point to where we have about 12 to 14 consistent players now, and we're going to start holding tournaments now officially, because right now we're kind of just doing round robins between each other, just like, hey, like, did you win that match between you guys? Okay, when you guys are done, we're done, we'll all meet over here at this table, we'll all play, since we all beat each other. There's no prize support, right? We're just hanging out with each other, having some drinks and playing some Magic. So we're getting to that point to where now there's a bunch of familiar faces, a bunch of familiar players that are starting to learn the format. They're more accepting of wanting to pay money to play the format, if that even makes sense with that end statement there. But
yeah, pay the $50 versus the $1,500 or whatever it is for a cEDH deck.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the owner of the store is incredibly awesome. He's a great dude. He's willing to help everybody out. He actually plays Scholar of the Ages, which is, it's good. So we have our little bit of pool of players. The two decks that I'm playing there currently, the Lord Weaver and then Wrath, Weatherlight, Stalwart. So those are the two decks that I play there the most. So I'm kind of hitting them with two opposite sides of the spectrum, with very slow, grindy control and blistering fast lane Lord Weaver. So.
Yeah, I got to play against a Wrath this go around. Very, very permission heavy list.
Oh yeah.
So okay,
that is Wrath, to say the least.
So that's why Weavers in the larger sense. You've got a local meta which you're trying to develop, and you're using that as the teachable moment for them. So the reason why you played it in Sanctuary is because, like, either it's just what you were kind of used to here recently because you've been playing it a lot, or did you bring it for a specific reason?
Oh, this is going to be kind of funny. So there's a player in our local meta that is now playing Weavers. My exact list, card for card. And I went there the past 2 Tuesdays and played some games against them. I'm sorry, this is not this past Tuesday, the 2 prior to the most recent one. And he beat the crap out of all of us. I did not beat him in a single game. And it was really, like, wow, kind of depressing, to say the least, because, like, he's new, right? That was the first time. The first Tuesday was the first time he played the deck ever, and he killed us on turn 5. And then the next game, he killed us on turn 4. And then the next game, he killed us on turn 6. And he's like, wow, this deck is really cool. But he didn't kill us, like, doing things like methodically trying to figure out, like, every line and everything. He was just like, turn 2, Langdon Tapper, turn 3, Vivian Graft Mage. Both creatures would get killed. He would untap, play a Weaver, untap, win the game. And everybody's like, what? Like, just like the weirdest scenarios ever. Or he was like, one of the games, which was like absurd, he just only played Landorus, played a Landon Tapper, not the Weaver, and then end of turn Wizard cycled, got the Alchemist, but he didn't know to get the Alchemist. So me and my friend, which was Kunks, picked up our cards, and he looked at us both going, why are you guys picking up your cards? And we're like, oh, you win the game. We'll let you figure out how to do it. And he kind of didn't understand why at first. And, you know, obviously we taught him. We're like, hey, look, you get the Alchemist, you win the game. But the reason it was funny was that I was playing Malcolm Kedis. I probed him, and his hand had the other wizards, and we had already killed the Vigian. So he had no other wizards in his deck but the Alchemist. So it was the only target actually in the deck to get. So he just won. And we were like, cool, you play it, you have the lane enchantments on your one lane, we lose. And he was like, this is such a cool deck, I can't lose. And I'm like, yeah, we can't beat you either, because I have an Abdel player in front of me, I have Wilson Far Traveler to the left, and he's over here in the other seat. And it's just one of those games where I'm like trying to keep the Wilson player off of me, trying to stop the Abdel from winning, while Weavers is over here just playing things that aren't very threatening, I guess you could call them, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a dork. But you have to keep your eye on it still. And then I would have to tap out to stop Wilson from pummeling me to the dirt. And then Abdel would try to catch up and keep pace with us. And then the Weavers would just win. And it was like over and over and over again for 2 Tuesdays in a row. And I was like, I had already talked about playing it because I've had the most reps on it here recently. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play it. Like if this guy is just closing his eyes and piloting it like this thing's insane. Like I have to play it. Like I don't believe the deck is as good as Gretchen. There's my hot take, whether it's a hot take or not. I don't believe it is as good as Gretchen, but it's still good.
It does.
And
it does the polar opposite thing of Gretchen. Gretchen is a very long game inevitability. Weavers is just jam, win. So it's just it's the same thing. It's just two ends of the spectrum.
Yep, I don't disagree.
So you were saying I interrupted you there. So
no worries.
You got the most reps on it, so you're like, hey, I'll do the thing, register in the tournament.
Well, so 2 of those new players asked me to play it as well. They were like, one of the guys' names is Nelson, super cool dude. We play cDH together as well, and he was just like, look, dude, he actually played, when I met him originally a while back now, he was playing a different variant of the one on Moxfield that has like 10,000 views. That was the list of Weavers that they were playing. And at the time, it was outdated.
We all know which one that is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At the time, it was outdated. This was a while back now, and he couldn't win a game with it in the local meta that we were playing. This was back in the Goblin Heist days, and he was just like, "Well, I can't win. What's going on?" So he was one of the individuals that asked me to play it in the tournament, see how I did, because we had been conversating back and forth, because that's the deck that they would like to start bringing to these online events, because they just got a computer system, they got the camera, they're all like set ready to go to start playing. So they're like, this is the deck I want to be piloting. Let me know how you do. If it's how it is, I'm going to just buy the whole thing, because I love the price point of the format. And all of his friends are also involved as well. So they're all getting decks. And yeah, it's just pretty excited with them just joining the format. So
I'm going to circle back to something you said earlier in the thing that kicked off this whole Weavers conversation, and I'm going to channel my inner Alk, Alcadron, my fellow RC member, with this. So you said that you use the deck in your local meta to teach threat assessment. Hearing Alk scream in my head, apparently you're bringing that deck to the actual cPDH meta, online meta, to teach players about threat assessment. Because this is definitively like okay, so I kind of remember the first Sanctuary that you won, because you had the combo piece sitting on top of your library, and there was a kerfuffle there between myself and another player. The second one that you won, was a combination of being really fast and also people not really having timely. I know we talked about it, back then, about people actually having interaction. It was just slower interaction than the timeliness of your combo. So there was this weird break point there. And then this one, I think there was one piece of interaction which you calmly brushed aside. So I know, well, even then, we had one match together for this tournament, and I had 2 pieces of interaction. You had 2 pieces of interaction, and you won that game. So, like, yeah, this is definitely the I think more people should play this this deck because of that reason. It has a lot of, unlike Gretchen, it's got a lot of like real early game consistency. If we're to do a little truth telling, 7 months ago, 7 months ago now, this is the deck that, if you've ever heard about the cheating kerfuffle in the online meta, this is the commanders which that person leveraged to get those cheating wins, which is unfortunate because you and I would probably both agree that the deck is good enough to where you didn't necessarily have to game the system. So,
yeah. So, there were a lot of us in the community that all agreed with that. Like, the deck was very good. I mean, it was the first variance of it back then, but the deck was definitely good enough to have not had that and still been sitting on a pedestal for sure.
Who needs a 70% win rate? 45% is good enough.
Yeah.
So, I definitely, well, Chris knows this, but most of you don't. I've got a Weavers. In fact, before we, and this is a good pivot into my next question. So I was actually working on Weavers and Tatiova at the end of last year when Chris is like, hey, let's do this thing, because mid-range was having kind of a crisis moment at that time. And we started to, kind of get our heads, and to the credit of the community too, they answered the call. A lot of people answered the call of like, hey, let's focus on developing this archetype and fleshing this out. And we got a lot of buy-in from the community. So that's kind of the rise of Sir Conrad, which originally started out as a mid-range deck, but then pivoted into control based on, way things work. And from there, like I've got a Weavers list in my bag right now that I've just, all I got to do is just pull the trigger and play the dang thing. So who knows? I might do it the next Sanctuary or what have you. So with that question and the preface that I just gave, in your mind, where is the meta?
That's a hard question to answer.
Well, Mr. 16 match wins and 3 tourneys. If anybody can do it, you can. Ready, go.
I don't really have a real answer for you, and I hate to say it in that terms. If you would like me to answer some, I have a few statements I could make. Might sound like a hot take, but
I got a couple of those too. Let's bounce those back and forth then.
Sure. Let me hit you with this statement. Then this will be a big topic for you. If players do not like combo, they should be playing aggro. There's my hot take with that. The reason I even say that, and aggro is a huge giant term, which is kind of rough. But the reason I say something along those lines is because what ends up happening is when you stop, someone from going for a win attempt, right? A lot of these piles are unable to close the game within due time. And because they can't close the game within that, time, they end up losing to either a different player trying for another win attempt, or the same player goes for a second win attempt because they didn't close the game within their opportunity. So they just go, okay, I'm just going to hit you for 1 for 46 turns. It's like, dude, you're not going to win in that time. Like, it's impossible. So that's kind of my hot take. Weaver's worst match is something that, like, runs at it. Like, you get these Ketis piles, pick a Ketis pile. Honestly, pick a Ketis pile. I don't care. Any commander, put it on Ketis. Pick a Ketis pile. Go. Like, you're gonna do well. Like gutter snipes, right? There's a lot of commanders in the format that will apply significant pressure to players.
So I'm going to disagree with you slightly, because I'm not going to mention any names or any commander names or anything like that because I'm not that kind of guy publicly. But you and I were in a match with an aggro player, and that experience prompted me to start doing some research on. What's interesting about that particular aggro deck is that it's always been the same pilot. So the same pilot with approximately the same strategy. Now, this is in a tournament setting, so not all of open play. All tournament matches is what I looked at. So what I saw is that where that deck is played in a tournament setting is there's a 62% chance they lose. Now, I'm extrapolating a little bit on this next point, but that's because I haven't run the numbers. This would cause me to do some real deep digging. I would suggest that not only is it a 62% chance that deck loses, but it's also a good likelihood that it's that person and whoever they targeted both go down together, and then the third person wins. So that's the part that's a little speculative that I can't verify at the moment. The 62% is verified that in tournament settings, that aggro deck has a 60, because the focus of the deck is to generate bodies and put a whole lot of pressure on one person at a time, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so let me give you a bit of kickback. If you listen to the two commanders that I specifically stated there, Gutter Snipe and Ketis anything,
Yeah,
those two specifically like go around that problem, right? So you're not looking at taking a player, pointing at them, and just going, "You're gone." You are actively going at the table, which one that gives incentive to other players, right? So I'm going to use Russell Rail because that was a deck in the tournament. First one that came to mind. It would incentivize that Russell Rail player to not stop them at certain points because you're helping them if they are a combat-based deck, correct? And that would proceed to all mid-range decks
and
this is
where the
right?
pinger conversation. This is all. What's interesting is the Ketis pivots into the greater pinger strategies that are happening right now, which are super interesting because they're that global damage that's happening. So I'm glad we had that little exchange there because I think based on we didn't say any specific names outside of a commander or two, but we did highlight very specifically a concept around aggro that someone should lean into, which I don't disagree with you. A greater focus on global versus targeted.
Yep. Yeah, because it solves a lot of the faults, right? Even these mid-range decks, right? That is their fault. They're like, okay, I have a pile of cards. Okay, I'm going to actively attack you. Okay, what about the other two players? You are not going to succeed if you poke at me or just try to take me out because then you've left them alone. There's now a disparity.
So what if I said this? So if you watch the last quarterly update video, you plural, which I get about the thank you to everyone. I get about 17 thumbs up every single video. So there's 17 warriors out there. Like, thank you. Like every single time, consistent. I don't know why that just came to mind, but there it is. So mid-range has been having a little bit of a problem. Even more so, it's weird. Mid-range had a problem last year, and then we tried to pour gasoline on it to try to fix it, and then it seems like it has more of a problem than it had in the previous year. So that's a little conundrum that I can't figure out. But to your point, so if we take mid-range as this, if we look at it in terms of this distribution, right? And if aggro's on one side and control is on the other, I would agree with you that if you had more of a proactive, like mid-range kind of deal where it's like big aggro, maybe big aggro, fast aggro, there's some delineation to make there. maybe that's a way to frame, looking into like taking a mid-range strategy and accelerating it. Or conversely, this is like, I don't have the numbers offhand, but control this last quarter, even though my beloved, Sir Conrad is a control list and part of this calculus. So that notwithstanding, control lists not only increased in popularity, but alongside that popularity, they were increasing in performance. So if you take mid-range and you divide it in half and you either gear towards control, big bodies, big plays, big spells, that sort of thing, there's some success there. And then, like you were saying, aggro, being a little bit more proactive with the aggressive threats, that's likely. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that's likely the outcome for mid-range, just looking at all of those problems and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, it does have a little bit to do with it, definitively, for sure. Like I can't disagree. I could give you a little pushback, but it's more of a longer topic in general. Let me hit you with something off the hip if you're up for it.
Yep.
You up for a little bit of a fun conversation?
Yeah.
What is the first? Let's pick on a deck.
Yep.
What is the first quote mid-range deck that comes to your mind? Any deck that comes to your mind first. Let's pick on that. Anything.
I see where you're going. I see where you're going, and I don't disagree with you.
Oh, no, anything. Like any mid-range deck you think about. The first one that comes to your mind, let's pick on that deck. Whatever it is, doesn't matter.
So that's legitimately mid-range?
Yeah, let's pick on that. We're going to use it as an example.
Man, that's tough. Okay. Let's I'm going to throw you a curveball. Because it's something that I legit think is mid-range. Satyr Enchanter.
Gator Enchanter. Okay, perfect. That's a good one. So, Satyr Enchanter and Wilson Far Traveler. So your curveball was good to the plate. So Wilson Far Traveler and Satyr Enchanter are actually outliers. So those are the two, and ironically, they're in Selesnya. So if you look at what I like to say are some of the best decks in the format, and I could back this up just by the way they win and some of the data as well as that. But these decks are based upon engines. So let's just use Weavers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weavers is a deck based upon building an engine, building a mana outlet. Mm-hmm. And you just make mana. You have an engine to draw cards. Gretchen is identical. Look at Malcolm, variant. Identical. Engine, mana, engine, draw, pingers, damage, right? Global effects, right? Mm-hmm. And you keep going down the chain. You could get all the way down to Loyal Subordinate, right? You get to Loyal Subordinate. What is it doing? It's an engine. It's building this. It's holding
an engine of pain.
yeah. But it's an engine, right? So ironically, the two outliers that I've learned is Satyr Enchanter and Wilson Far Traveler. They are both engine commanders, but they are, once again, they have nothing to combo in the deck with. There's great synergy, right? But they're just, I'm gonna beat you down, right? That is those are two decks based upon engines.
Let's pause that for a second. Would your previous or your recent experience with Cutzel, would you elevate that to this level, or is that jury still out? Just for the people out there.
The jury is still out. He had some incredible draws, to say the least. Like turn 2 Cutzel every game was awesome, and then just like, I mean, the deck obviously had some very good deck building upon it as well. So, but what that deck was doing is exactly what I'm describing. And ironically, what are we looking at? Another Selesnya deck. It's building an engine, right? It's going, here's my Cutzel turn 3, untapping, give this a counter, draw. It's exactly what the other two decks are doing. Play a Wilson, play a Traveler, tap this creature, draw. Tutor. What is Satyr Enchanter doing? Here's Satyr, draw. Those are engines. those styles of decks, look at Dargo Ketis. What is it doing? It's an engine, right? It plays these little dirty things and it moves forward in a specific manner to win the game by using its engine. So those are some of the strongest decks in the format. And I'm bringing that up because if you look at some of the mid-range files, not all, there are outliers, but a lot of them tend to be a pile of just great cards. That's really, really hard to...
So I know the answer to this. So would you agree or disagree that the initiative is an engine?
I would disagree. I don't believe it's an engine.
And I think I know the answer. And the reason for that is...
Well, what do you think it is?
So an engine is likely something that can be done on command. So you play a various speed of spells, and then you can actually leverage that at will. Whereas the initiative requires this trading back and forth, and it's usually just once a turn, which is just an effect and not an engine.
Yeah, and you lose a lot on it too, right? Because you fall into, and the reason I say this too is because you look at it and you're like, okay, I want to protect this, because there's no reason you ever want to give your opponent something. There are certain players in the format I will never allow them to have anything, right? So that's one of those things that is exactly that, right? It's like, yeah, it feels good when it pops off, right? It's like playing your 15 mana Emrakul on turn 15. Like, I did it, I played an Emrakul. But that's what the initiative is doing a lot, because one, you can't guarantee you're going to have it. You're against 3 players. You cannot guarantee if the other 3 players are going to let you keep it. Step 1. Step 2. How are you guaranteeing you're getting to your next turn if you're going to just slam something like that and assuming you'll be fine with it? Like, there's so many flaws. Like, you're in a boat with like 12 holes in it.
I've seen
you could patch it.
I've seen Throne of the Dead 3. I've seen Throne of the Dead 3 fail more times than I'm comfortable with.
Yep. Well, that's one of the things. So as you know, and one of the decks that I thought was based upon an engine was my Azra Ozmaker list. I was super gung-ho with that. That is a mid-range deck to the T. That is, if there could be a definition for mid-range, that Azra list was it. I controlled your hand. I went turn 2 initiative. Like, the deck was gas. Couldn't kill a player, saved my life. I just, like, there was a tournament. In fact, I want to mention some names with this one. I was in a match against Labert. This was, I think this was Sanctuary 4, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And Labert goes for a win. And I'm like, don't do it. He's like, no, I'm comfortable doing it. I was like, no, don't do it. He's like, no, I'm doing it. I'm like, no, please don't. And we went back and forth a few times. And I was like, I'm full gripped. I will stop you. He's like, Ned, it's impossible because I'll be able to bring this stuff back 6 or 7 times. And to just end it, I stopped Labert from winning. Emptied my whole hand, though. We passed the turn to the next player, which was Bray on Gretchen.
Win.
Bray just goes, win the game. And I was like, and what makes that exchange like maddening was because one of the cards I used against Labert for winning the game was a 4 mana instant that said destroy target creature or land. And I was going to blow up Bray's land in that turn cycle, but I was like, you're trying to win the game, and I have to use this or we lose. And I was just like, there's nothing I could do. So, like, I chose who won that game, and I felt awful after it. It was one of those awful feelings where I was like, no one did anything but me in that sequencing, and I made it a point to Labert not to win. And it wasn't like I was trying to do it like in spite. It was just Labert went for a win, and I used all my cards to stop it. And then the next player just untapped and won.
So not to pick on anybody in that scenario, but kind of using that to kind of like spiral up and look down from 30,000 feet. Because that's the thing. As Rodsmaker is always going to be a commander which people come back to. So your experience with the list is invaluable because it's not only a cautionary tale, but you and I both know there are decks out there that we can't play that somebody else does well. So it's possible.
Definitely fair.
It's possible that in that pod, if Bray or whoever the fourth person was, and kind of extrapolating that outwards, because I would also suspect that people are playing still playing somewhat greedily with their keeps and their deck construction. That if anybody else had the opportunity to interact, that would have freed up a piece of interaction for you. If everybody was being the responsible player.
Well, Bray had interaction, so
okay.
But it wasn't for other people. It was for them and themselves, right? Like that's the catch, right? You have to also protect yourself, and it was Tamiyo's like Ranger Guile or something along those lines, or Snakeskin Veil. It was those cards that say target your stuff. So there was no means or no anything where they could have done anything to help the situation. It was like I could defend me, myself, and I. Which isn't, honestly, I don't think it's incorrect to protect your own game plan. But it was just an interesting topic because if you told me that the tournament was every round was 5 hours, I could tell you right now, I'll play as Rodsmaker. I will win every 5-hour round because that deck is ridiculous at stopping game actions. But trying to win in a timely manner, I'm trying to one you to death. That is no easy task, to say the least, and I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that a lot of us, including myself, right? Like I played Azra.
The creatures that make it effective also are the worst ones for closing out the game, which is the mid-range problem from a creature perspective.
Well, exactly. So let me poke at that game one more time. So this is a fantastic topic, right? So the closer of that game in that deck was Grey Merchant of Asphodel, right? Which is a fantastic card in all mid-range strategies if you're playing a black deck, right? It's a beautiful card. It drains the most. It hits everyone symmetrically. So, amazing card. Here's that match. Here's what happened to me. I'll never forget it because it was maddening. I was like, I have this game. They can't stop me. I go, here's a Grey Merchant. I had like 6 Devotion without the Grey Merchant. It was nuts. I was like, oh, you guys are dead. Slam it. Lobert hits me with a, we'll counter that. I was like, doesn't matter. Next turn, I'm like, Dread Return. Bray counters it. I was like, doesn't matter. I got more in the tank, boys. We're doing it again. I was like, sack the 3. Target Grey Merchant. Lobert was like, shred memory. Exile it. I was like, oof. I was like, my one biggest win condition, these guys held back 3 times. That's insane. Like that's insane to me. And I was just like, it's one of those things that is my way to win the game, and they handled it like it was nothing. It wasn't even like difficult for them, right?
So I see what you're doing. So Azra Oddsmaker and its great Black Hope in Grey Merchant. The one of the ways that you seek to win the game versus a Weaver's, which has X number of redundancy. So it's like, okay, play this counter. Okay, I don't care. I got 12 more. Ready? Let's go. That sort of thing. Versus the you don't have 12 reanimation spells.
Exactly. I have very few of these pieces. I mean, I'm playing cards like in fact, my list played Brain Spoil to tutor for that Grey Merchant. That's how big
Critical.
of a deal that card was, right? And there were other 5-mana targets. Actually, you had given me a great feedback for that list in its era, which was the Shatter. Forget the name of it entirely.
The red saga that steals a creature. Yeah, I can't remember what the name of it is.
The card was amazing. That was my other tutor target. That was my other Grey Merchant. But it still was just like wanting someone to death was not a valid strategy within a time limit, like specifically within a time limit, right? Like I won games like here locally and stuff like that, kitchen table, where our games were 2.5, 3 hours long. But that's not realistic in a tournament setting. I'm not going to be able to play a 3 hour game against you unless I get to the finals, right? Like there's where I'm able to prolong as long as possible. But even at that, I struggle with certain decks like that, and I've also been the Malcolm player and things of that nature. So if we could figure out a way to cause these decks to have a way to end the game in a timely manner, we would fix everything, right? That's why I brought up Ketis Anything. Ketis Anything would alleviate it. Not entirely, right? It's like a band-aid, but it would help solve, even if your commander's a 2/2, right? That's 2 pingers, right? If you think about it in that way, you're hitting everyone for 2. And there's 3 opponents. Not all 3 players have the ability to block. And Ketis does a lot of work, right? So as long as you have the symmetrical style effects, you have the ability to succeed.
I think time will tell. I think time will tell, because bringing up Satyr, which has top forward here in the last year, it's always been a kind of a go-to deck for people that see the effect. It was once rumored to draw more cards than Weavers or Tatiova. I don't know if that's the case anymore, but because things have changed drastically since that era. But what I was getting to was in allowing such a strong word, in seeing mid-range metastasize the way that it did last year with all the players in the space, and then you and I trying to desperately like inject something into it and trying to bring just new concepts. Like, okay, if you're doing it this way, let's scrap that and let's do it this way instead, and still having no real success. And then out of all of that, seeing, because B. Schroeder, Hive, organically developing that Wilson deck. Like, Wilson's been around for a number of years. I remember playing it on Izlain's stream when it was just released, because he likes to do that sets specific build stuff. And I remember thinking something was there, but like, so out of the way that things used to be and the way we tried to make it, you've got Hive in the middle kind of organically developing this thing. And I think that's probably how mid-range is going to shake itself out over time. I think we're just going to progressively start collecting individual commanders that will, the things, it'll be at the end of this year. Yeah, I can sum this up really, really quickly. At the end of this year, it'll be things that we used to think were mid-range and things that were organically developed, and it's going to be a real small list of things that are actually mid-range.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
And whatever that is how it's going to shake itself out. So, kind of lightly circling back on the what is the meta, and not knowing exactly where that was. You had an interesting observation regarding this tournament and the breakup or makeup of archetypes there.
I think I could answer your question a little bit, but I can't answer it per online. I could answer it per me specifically. I mean, what I play against locally. My meta locally, and I've said this to a few people. Everyone plays to win. And what I mean by that is that no one ever isn't terrifying. So, for instance, like one of the decks I told you, 2 of the decks that get borrowed from me the most is Wilson and Cypress. That Wilson list, the first time I ever let someone borrow it, that player top forward that event with it. First time ever playing it, top forward. They were like, this deck's gas. My opponents had nothing. And I'm like, yeah, the deck's good. They're like, this is nuts. And never went to a draw. In fact, to date, our rounds in person are 75 minutes. We've had one draw in, I don't know, 15 events. One draw.
Mm.
And ironically, it was Siverus and Abdel Black were in that match. And they just like played gray merchants on top of their gray merchants. And that's why they went to a draw. Because they both have all the flickers, right? And all the undying crap. So it was one of those styles of games. But it wasn't due to lack of power or due to too much power. It's just playing real Magic. And they were the last two in the pods. They killed the other two players and went 1v1.
Mm.
So I was one of those players. That's why I remember it. So yeah. But it's those styles of decks and what I play against, we're all terrifying. So when I sit down, my standard pods compositions are like a Dargo Ketis, a Abdel, a Weavers, and a Gretchen, right? That's an average pod for me. So there's none of this like, I'm not as scary as you. Every single player is terrifying. So we don't have that just, I'm going to bolt your Malcolm because it's the only Malcolm at the pod concept, right? I'm holding my bolt because if I use it on your thing, you could win the game. So I am like holding that bolt for dear life, right? Like if I use this bolt,
he's bringing this up because this is me. I am notorious for bolting Malcolms like in the first couple of turns. Notorious.
Yes, you do.
And yes. I don't feel bad about it.
Yep. But in these pods, right? Like Zada is another one that sees play. Like if this is going to be somewhat of a mean statement, I think the worst deck in our entire local meta is Dargo Keleth. That's the worst deck that we have in our local meta because it has trouble closing the game because it picks on a player. And that deck, but it's still like turn 2 Dargo, yeet you off the table turn 3 or 4. So it causes this like drastic shift in the table. And it just, everyone is just like, oh, are you going to hit me? And, you know, everybody's like white in the face when that deck is at the table. But
so on that drastic shift, so in that game that we played, I had turn 5 win in my hand.
Did you? That's cool.
But because of the pressure that I was getting from one player, I couldn't outrun the damage that I was going to receive before I could combo. So I had to take my combo cards and I had to pivot to be able to use them in an awkward way just to be able to live. So that's why I was so like pissed, because it's like, man, we all talk about the importance of game 1. You got to get that game 1. And then if you lose game 2, so what? But you can win game 3. This is how you get into the finals, that kind of stuff. Like I had it. I was ready.
That was an interesting pod because of like seed order and everything like that. But like that the aggressive deck there at that table, like I don't think there was anything wrong, because if you look at me and you look at the other deck at the table, we're both free decks. So they can't race us. So if it's a race and they're like, I have to get one of these players off the table, they're not racing me and they're not racing the other player because we're both free decks. But if they look at you, you're the only player at the table that can definitively build a wall that they will never break through ever, that's what puts certain decks in this disparity that I keep talking about.
That's the problem.
Yep. So once you've built that wall, how do they beat you? They don't. And if you look at a player and go, I can't win against you, my goal is to draw the game, you need to look at your deck.
And I tried to explain that, because you'll recall, I'll say, hey, this is not a mid-range list. Like, what I was saying in that moment is that it's not that I can't create a wall. I'm just going to have to expend all the things that I'm going to, that unnaturally, I'm going to have to unnaturally expend all of my spells to be able to make that wall. Whereas, like, if you swing 1, I'm not going to, if I had 2 tokens, maybe I'll block 1, but like this 1-for-2 trade-off by splitting up the damage really doesn't disrupt the game plan. Like he could have swung 2 creatures at me, forcing me to absorb, and still, instead of an all-out kind of, you know what I mean?
Yep. Oh yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Like I think like that dynamic is probably going to be changing soon though. Like I believe everyone that's been seeing the format grow is noticing that, you know, if I'm playing some Rakdos pile, which I've been one of those Rakdos piles. In fact, I've been several of those Rakdos piles, from Dargo Armixes to, I mean, so many Rakdos piles, that you're learning that that's not a viable way to close the game. Like if I'm trying to beat you to death with an Armix,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, I need 4 hours of your time. Like, and with tournaments on the
Even
rise,
I can
it'd be rough.
put a finer point on this. So Conrad, I still believe, is a good list. Maybe the meta's not right for it at the moment, and on top of that, myself and Aaron kind of forcing that down everybody's throats. It's on the top of their brains, so they're prepared for it. So as moving forward, if Conrad is showing up more sporadically, I think that'll probably increase its chances because people won't be prepped for it. But
Here's
what's
my hot take for you. That deck's one of the decks I have that I play locally. The deck's ridiculously good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that deck is gas.
But
Like if you bring Conrad to an event, that deck's good. You would do well.
But looking at, so Conrad is, well, at least my version of Conrad, and I think Aaron's too, is real edict heavy. And then with Legate Lanius coming out, Legate's an edict in the command zone. I even spent the money on a Surge foil to build it because I absolutely love the reanimation of edict creatures. That's like, if that's a strategy near to Clay's heart, that's what I love. But that's the thing, looking at the difference, Conrad is a death engine.
There you go. There's the true difference between them, right? One of them states, I win the game by myself.
Mm-hmm.
The other one says, I prolong the game by myself, which means you're forced to depend on your 99, which gives you a very inconsistent factor.
Mm-hmm.
Where Sir Conrad alone by itself needs no other, needs lands in itself to exist, can win the game. I have a lot of faith in Sir Conrad. I know you guys haven't had the best experience here recently with it. I know Aaron did get the one top 4, but I do believe it's actually in a pretty good spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, it's like you were saying earlier, a lot of people were expecting it because you and him both went to town playing it so repeatedly throughout the meta. So it became like, okay, if this shows up, I've lost to it 15 times online. I don't want to lose again. Right, I'm going to push you, into the mat.
Yeah, so a situation like that where, because Aaron and I played it a lot in matchups throughout the week. So it was informing card decisions, like for deck construction. It was informing play styles, how to play around it and all of that. And yeah, I think you and I both agree that a little cooling period, going into like an unknown meta in the future, it could be catastrophic for that meta.
So, well, I mean, Sir Conrad does one of the few things that a lot of other decks cannot, right? It's an engine. And it, tortured existence, and that's a lethal shot, right? I've seen so many games where that just 24s the table. Bubbling mucks, rituals, all of those things. The deck is very strong. I could talk about that deck for many hours. I find it to be a very, very powerful, powerful deck.
I love it so much I foiled it out. So
you and Aaron both. You both foiled it out. His is completely foil. It's beautiful. All right, I love looking at it.
So we've reached our hour. I have one last question for you. And it won't make sense to anybody unless they watch that final match, which I highly suggest you do. I don't know if Bobby is uploading those things to Sanctuary YouTube, but it'll be on Twitch for the next however many weeks until Twitch does its Twitch thing. So one of the many things that you're known for is angry hands. So there was a moment in that finale that it was regarding the initiative, I think, or at least the viewers thought somebody had missed an initiative trigger or something like that, and you had a bunch of angry hands. What was that all about? Were you talking about ham sandwiches, or?
So are you talking about when the echoing truth happened, or are you talking about where the player took the Cutzel player took the initiative? Is that the scene you're talking about?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about that, what that was is that they took the initiative without taking it. So they took it, but they played an informant, a Rafine's informant,
Mm-hmm.
and then drew their card. But if you look at the screen, I haven't looked at it, but I was looking at the screen, and what ended up happening was they drew a card, they put it to the top of their hand, and they were supposed to take the initiative. And
Which means land, shuffle, then top card.
Then top card, right? So the judge stopped the play, and that's where my hands came in, and I was like, hey, I don't have a problem with it. I watched them take that card. That's why you see me do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's the top of their hand. I don't mind. And we were discussing it. I was like, it's top of their hand. I watched them do it. And that player goes, it is this card, and shows it. They put it back into their deck. They got their land, and then they drew a card blind.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, there was a player vote at the table, of course. The judge was very nice and said, if you guys agree with this, so on and so forth. But there was no real complications there. The judge was on point with literally everything throughout the entire match, with all of the problems that were going on. There were a few gameplay mistakes that the judge was very good at pointing out, saying, we're stopping here.
Liam is good.
This. Yeah, very, very good. So it was very well conducted. And that's what that was about. That's why you see my hands flare around a lot, because I was like, no, you're good. And it doesn't help. I have a big light right above me right here.
So it's like a shadow.
My shadows are always here. And I like that because I don't have two cameras. But because my shadow is always here, if my cards ever come up out of the screen, you always see my hand movements. So there's no problems with it, because you see my hands still. I try to keep my hands like right here, because so many of us, including, I've done it so many times at this point, where I'm looking and doing the shuffle with my hands, and I just show the table my hand. It's like one of those things where it's just like, it's so hard because of where the camera sits. You're just like, end up showing the table what you have going on, and you're like, crap. I did that. And then they know it. And after the game, if you're playing with friends, they'll tell you, be like, hey man, and I saw everything you had in your hand. I saw you're freed from the reel. That's why I went for a win. I was like, yeah, you got me. So, but yeah,
okay.
That was it.
Well, you're known for gesticulating.
Thing. Yeah.
And the commentators are having a field day with you. It's like, why is he gesticulating so crazily, so wildly? He's a wild man. So
Spanish Florida guy. Yep.
So a little bit of history. Clay got his first game warning ever in playing Magic this tournament.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
So Battered Golem doesn't automatically untap, and I forgot.
Oh, you didn't push the trigger. Yep. Makes sense.
So not only did I forget, everybody at the table forgot too. So I put Prophetic Raving as a one-mana enchantment. It allows you to basically loot, and I use that in TPI to cast a spell, untap, because the soldier token comes into play, and then basically use it as a modified curiosity control to kind of loot through my deck. Well, I was naturally untapping it on my untap step, and he jumps in right at the beginning of my turn, and he's like, Clay, how did you untap that? And I was like, oh, I tapped it on his turn. Now I moved to my turn and I went to untap, and he goes, read the card. Oh. So Clay's first ever player warning.
I get it.
So
get it. We've all been there. We've all been there. So
all right. That's our time. If you made it this far, this will be put in the description as well. My assumption is that Common Theory, the creator of Common Theory here, will be talking about this in more detail with the other co-host and their play experience for that tournament yesterday, Sanctuary 6. I'm not sure, but I would wager to guess that you'll probably be talking with Izlain at some point in time as well. If you're doing the thing that we've been kind of all doing the last like little bit, it's like the beginning of a circuit. Clay focuses on one thing, Izlain focuses on another thing, and then I assume that you guys will be focusing on another thing if you do interviews in the future as well. So it's a way to do the thing without necessarily, standing on top of each other. Of course, if you keep winning, I guess I gotta invent things to talk about. So start sucking like right now. All right, army guy. So yeah, I'll put links to all of Chris's stuff in the description for this video. Make sure you go check out their stuff. You got any last thoughts, my man?
Yeah, I just wanted to plug the Common Theory. We will be doing a breakdown. My other two co-hosts now, Ace Sandwich and Kunks, were actually in the tournament as well. And we will be going through our entire tournament experience in a very upcoming video. So, yes, very much so. It'll be kind of breaking down, our experience. We all played pretty strong decks, in my opinion. So we'll be breaking down our rounds, kind of discussing, where we made misplays and didn't make misplays, or where we got punished for game decisions, things like that. So
righteous. You might have to, for old time's sake, because Puzzle came out of retirement to play in this event, and he got one match, one win.
Yep. He was in my round 2. So he was my round 3 actually. And here, spoiler alert, Puzzle will be in our episode starting tomorrow morning, every Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Puzzle is in our episode for this one. So there'll be the 4 of us discussing how to win the game. So
sweet.
Very excited for that episode.
Maybe I should tune in, given my record.
Yes, definitely.
It's cheaper than paying. It's cheaper than paying for coaching support, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right, friends, we'll catch you. We got RIW coming up this week. We'll be there. Well, I'll be there. I don't know exactly what'll come of that. Keep your fingers crossed for your boy. So, all right. Peace out.
Later.